Winston the Beard, back again. I think we paused it at South Dakota, and also I just had a thought that I missed out Cuyahoga National Park, or Cuyahoga, which is in Ohio, just between, well, kind of between Cleveland and Columbus, just about here. Hardly shows up on the map, but it was pretty big, and that was my first national park in the States. Wasn't a checkpoint. Niagara Falls was a checkpoint. Niagara Falls is not a national park, but yeah, Cuyahoga was pretty impressive. Saw turtles and deer and lots of birds of prey. Saw snakes having sex, which is interesting. And what else? Chipmunks. Saw a dead beaver, unfortunately. So hadn't seen a live beaver until much later in the trip. But yeah, Cuyahoga was definitely one of the top parks, and it was free because I was there in might have been there in April, I think. So late April, maybe early May. No, I think late April. Anyway, Cuyahoga National Park, pretty cool. I just thought I'd mention that because I forgot to. Right, so we came through South Dakota up here, and I mentioned Indian reserves, and I think I made it sound like the Indian reserves are in this area, but no, they're all over the place. They're all over the country, and they're huge. A lot of them are next to or near large expanses of water or river, or national parks as well. There's a huge one connected to Yellowstone, I think, or certainly the national forest around Yellowstone. There are Indian reserves in Utah around the Uinta Mountains, and there are Indian reserves. Well, there's a huge one in South Dakota next to grasslands. But yeah, they're all over the country. Essentially, Indian reserves is land that is controlled by Indian communities. They don't all live in wigwams or teepees or anything like that. They're westernized, but the land belongs to them, and it's governed by them. I think they have slightly different laws, or they don't fall into some of the standard laws that the rest of the states do. So just thought I'd mention the Indian reserves, rather large areas on the map. Right, so we came through South Dakota. Now, this is when things started to get really interesting. The second national park after Cuyahoga, a while ago, that I came to was Badlands. And Badlands was completely and utterly different to the rest of the Midwest that I'd come across. It went from being completely flat farmland to an ancient sea, and Badlands is kind of the edge of the ancient sea. That is, there's no sea there anymore. It's just dirt and dust. But Badlands were, I've taken pictures, but they're muddy peaks. Not like mountains, half the size. They're, I don't know, maybe 1,000 or a couple of thousand feet up from the ancient seabed. You can't walk up them very easily, and the mud gets eroded by storms and rain quite easily. It's just like clay, but the formations of them are incredible. Very unique and unusual. Not much light. Well, there was life, but it didn't look like there was much life. It was like a mud-peaked desert. Well worth a visit. Very interesting. And stunning scenery, especially when the sun set over them and came up over them as well. Nature was great. Saw my first bison in Badlands, and that really kind of made me feel like I'd arrived in America when I started seeing nature like that. As well as the bison, I've seen 2 or 3 pairs now of bald eagles, which are on the rise. They were pretty close to being in trouble a while ago, but America's done some cool things to get them back. And considering it's their national bird, it's on top of all their embassies. Pretty important that they did that, so that was cool. And yeah, I've seen a few. Really impressive animal. I think I saw them. I saw a couple on the Missouri when I came over it, coming into Nebraska, and that was really special. I had a walk along the river, and this pair of bald eagles followed me up the river. They were clearly checking me out to see what I was doing, whether they could eat me, I'd imagine. But when I see things like that, I kind of get reminded why I'm doing this trip. It was the nature that really brought me to the States, the natural places, as well as finding real, true Americans in American communities, rather than just visiting the tourist spots in all the cities. Seeing the eagles and the bison and the coyotes that don't live anywhere else on the planet, that's the real reason I came, and I'm doing pretty well. There's only a few things I haven't seen yet, but they mean America to me, so it's important that I saw them, and I'm really glad I did. Anyway, back to the map. Badlands was spectacular. Managed to see quite a bit of it. Camped in 2 campsites within the park. Very impressive. And then I think I came across some of the most, I want to say homely, but it was nothing like home. It was just, I felt at home when I visited this area, and it was the area around the Black Hills. The Black Hills, in fact I can do this because it just goes onto the other map. Black Hills area were areas around west of the Badlands, so it gets very hilly, but not mountainous. They were famous because of the gold rush. They found gold there, and a lot of the old cities like Deadwood and what other cities were there? Sturgis, places like that. They were all built on the gold rush. There were a lot of gulches there, and essentially that's where they found gold, and they mined it, and they became really ridiculously wealthy. So they were old cowboy towns, and the towns were fascinating. But I camped in the woods for I don't know, maybe a week, and it was just stunning. So I saw a lot of nature, saw not very many people. Tourist season hasn't started, so apart from visiting places like Rushmore, where there was just loads of coachloads of Japanese tourists, I won't go into that. There was hardly anyone around. Custer National Park was there, and Wind Cave National Park, both very interesting places for different reasons. Wind Cave obviously has a massive cave, and the trails around here, the landscape around here was all hilly, and various trees, and it was spring as well, so things had really started to kick on when it came to nature, and it was really beautiful. Camping in the woods was really special. I'm not sure I'll go back in a hurry, especially in tourist season, but seeing it when it's quiet, I definitely like to maybe revisit. It's a really nice place to hang out. After the Black Hills, I managed to navigate KP&I quickly into Wyoming. Obviously I'm going to see a lot of Wyoming later, because that's where Yellowstone mainly is. We nipped into Devil's Tower, which it's not on the map, but it's there. Devil's Tower, I've just written about that. There's loads of photos on it. The Devil's Tower is a natural rock formation comes up out of the earth, where magma had risen and cooled on its way, and then the other land around it had been eroded away, and it's left this huge, great big tower. There's a much more interesting story about how it was made in my blog post, if you want to read it. But Devil's Tower was the first landscape that I saw that had a really emotional effect on me. I don't know why. I wasn't prepared for it. It just did. It felt very spiritual, actually. The history of it, the connection that the native Indians had with it, the fact that there was still, it's the first time I'd come across prayer blankets and bundles around the trees and the landscape around the tower. So I didn't feel like it was a religious place. I just thought it was, well, in terms of nature, it was definitely that kind of, it gave that kind of vibe. So, not sure why, but it had a very poignant effect on me. Anyway, then we went up to North Dakota, so I'll talk about that in a sec. Cheerio.